Talo falava Bulavinaka and warm Pacific greetings from Suva, Fiji. It is indeed a beautiful morning here. Now, all protocols observed, it is a great pleasure to be given the opportunity to address you all today. On behalf of the Chief Executive Officer and the management of the Pacific Tourism Organization, I would like to extend our sincere appreciation for the opportunity accorded to SPTO to be part of this auspicious event. We thank the UNWTO for recognizing our work in MST, and I'm therefore honored to be sharing our experience from the Pacific with you today. My topic is on the implementation of MST, a regional and sectoral approach to governance and policy arrangements for measuring sustainability in the tourism sector, the experience of the Pacific region. Now, as part of my brief intervention today, I will be discussing the following. One, I will give you a brief introduction to SPTO and a short overview of tourism performance in the Pacific. I will then highlight a few key points on our experience with the high-level leadership in the development of tourism and the role of statistics in tourism development. I will then briefly share our integrated approach and why. I will provide a very brief outline of the major barriers to tourism development and measuring sustainability. I will then speak to the benefits of our integrated approach and close off with some key lessons from the Pacific region. Now, the Pacific Tourism Organization is an intergovernmental organization that is based out of Suva, Fiji. We have 20 Pacific Island member countries and over 100 private sector members. We are governed by a Council of Tourism Ministers and a Board of Directors comprising of heads of national tourism organizations, with 5 private sector representatives, including member representation of the airline industry, the accommodation sector, the cruise and sailing industry, the tourism industry association bodies, and inbound tour operator businesses. Now, our mandate is to develop and promote tourism in the Pacific with a vision for the next 5 years that the Pacific will be empowered and benefiting from sustainable tourism. The 3 key strategic priorities of the organization falls into the 3 key areas of regional marketing, research and statistics, and sustainable tourism planning and development. Now, aside from our core members, SPTO works collaboratively with international, regional, and national partners. In terms of tourism performance overview, tourism is indeed a major economic sector for most of our small island countries. It contributes significantly to the GDP through tourism receipts as well as through employment. Pre-COVID, the Pacific had recorded 2.2 million in terms of visitor arrivals by air to our shores and bringing in about $4 billion in tourism receipts. Arrivals had grown at the average rate of 3% per year. Visitors are mainly from our neighboring countries of Australia and New Zealand, as well as our long-haul markets of USA, Europe, Asia as our emerging market. Now, aside from the beautiful tropical islands we are famous for, visitors come to the Pacific for the purpose of holidaying, visiting friends and relatives, doing business, attending sports events, and others. Now, in terms of annual performance, at the close of 2020, total visitors to the Pacific dropped significantly by 80%. And in terms of tourism receipts, it dropped by a significant 83% compared to 2019. In terms of market share, pre-COVID, Fiji takes about 40% of the visitor market share to the Pacific, and is followed by French Polynesia, Vanuatu, Samoa, Papua New Guinea, and Cook Islands. Now, at its Board of Directors meeting on 27th of May this year, 2 regional milestones were achieved, and this was the endorsement of our Pacific Sustainable Tourism Policy Framework and the Pacific Tourism Statistics Strategy by our member countries. Acknowledging that tourism is the hardest hit sector as a result of the pandemic, this is more crucial than ever as we collectively join forces in forging a resilient and inclusive and sustainable pathway for restarting tourism globally as well as in the Pacific Islands. In our case, high-level commitment and leadership has played an integral role in supporting regional efforts towards sustainable tourism development and as well as measuring progress and sustainability. This has been in many forms. First of all, through the program restructure of SBTO in 2015, following the endorsement of the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, which led to the establishment of the Sustainable Tourism Program for the region, which was a very bold move by our member countries, noting that SBTO was initially established as a regional marketing coordination body for the region. This Sustainable Tourism Program commenced in 2017 and coincided with the UN International Year of Sustainable Tourism for Development. Now, 2 years later, our member countries, through our Board of Directors and Council of Tourism Ministers, called for regional direct policy direction and coordination in the area of sustainable tourism. At the same time, they had recognized the importance of elevating partnerships in tourism statistics. Now, recognizing our limitation in resources and capacity, we mobilized an integrated approach to MST. At the regional level, we aim to set our priorities as a region first. This process was especially vital given the evolving devastating impacts of the pandemic, as well as natural disasters and other health-related risks, such as the measles outbreak in Samoa in mid-2019. Our priorities were set as part of the development process for the Pacific Sustainable Tourism Policy Framework, which really outlines very clearly the collective vision of the Pacific tourism sector that by 2030, we will be empowered by and benefiting from tourism that is prosperous, inclusive, and resilient. It improves the well-being of our communities, promotes, restores, and protects our cultures, islands, and ocean ecosystems. Underpinning this vision are 4 key goals that we would like to achieve by 2030. One is ensuring prosperous economies. 2 is looking at improving and thriving and inclusive communities. 3 is promoting visible and valued cultures. And 4, achieving healthy islands and oceans. Now, having this at the forefront of sustainable tourism development, we then moved to the establishment of our regional tourism statistics strategy. This process was inclusive and it involved the same stakeholders who were part of the Sustainable Tourism Policy Framework development process. But we had also ensured that we included more technical partners working in the field of statistics, including regional and international technical partners, as well as NTOs and NSOs. Now, having completed this work now, we will be embarking on a clear pathway to establish a robust sustainability indicator framework that will guide our work in measuring progress of sustainability as in relation to our regional goals. At the regional level, the governance and policy arrangements we have put in place supports our Pacific region's contribution to meeting our international commitments to the SDGs, the Paris Agreement, and the Samoa Pathway, and others. But it also at the national level contributes to providing that guidance and informs national level priorities and targets of our member countries through national development plans, tourism sector plans, and others. Now, outlined here are the key processes to our regional MST approach. While these 2 regional policy instruments were done in parallel as a regional implementing body, leading this work, we assured and ensured complementarity in processes throughout the over 12 months of continuous engagement with stakeholders. Now, throughout these processes, we have clearly recognized the important roles of different stakeholder groups. As a regional body, we recognize the important role of organizations such as SBTO and the Pacific community and others in inspiring positive change through the strengthening of regional mechanisms, including regional cooperation at all levels. This leadership role positions the Pacific well in meeting our global commitments but also looking at forging durable and tangible partnerships required, such as those with partners such as UNWTO and others. Now, as proposed through the Pacific Tourism Statistics Strategy, a multi-stakeholder regional reference group will be established to provide guidance to the implementation of the Pacific Tourism Statistics Strategy and related tourism statistics initiatives. This will include global agencies such as UNWTO, donor agencies, technical partners, NSOs, NTOs, private sector, and civil society. At national level, it is very clear that country leadership and ownership is fundamental to effecting the change we want to see on the ground. And the work of the NTOs and NSOs therefore remain paramount in measuring sustainability in the development of tourism. The policies set by NSOs and NTOs will continue to be of great importance in the work that we foresee, including in the establishment of national tourism statistics working groups, which will be mobilized to ensure an inclusive membership to lead the MST process at national level. At industry level, we also recognize where data and insights from industry are required. We foresee the important role of business owners and their staff members in contributing to meeting the national level data requirements of NSOs and NTOs. Importantly, there are significant barriers to developing sustainable tourism and measuring sustainability in the Pacific. This slide outlines some of the major ones. Specifically, I wanted to speak on the following sustainable tourism development constraints. One is on resources, which is quite limited, and this includes technical resources, financial and technological resources. Secondly, we see awareness of sustainability or sustainable development is still a very major setback for us. Some of our stakeholders, if not most, still associate sustainability with environmental sustainability and nothing more. And thirdly, the scale of private sector is quite small in the Pacific, therefore investment capital is quite limited. In the measuring of sustainability, we also recognize that capacity constraints are very evident here, and we recognize that no one size fits all solution will be suitable for us. Data quality and consistency are also other major gaps, and of course, coordination amongst key stakeholders at national, regional, international levels are also major setbacks for development. Now, from our experience on the other side, we have benefited in many ways from the integrated sectoral approach we have taken towards establishing our governance arrangements and policy frameworks for measuring sustainability. One, we have been able to establish a shared vision that the Pacific region is empowered by and benefiting from sustainable tourism that is informed by regular, accessible, and high-quality tourism statistics and intelligence. Two, it has also brought together our countries and stakeholders to define this pathway, promoting learning and sharing of information and knowledge, whilst also setting a platform for national level actions. And thirdly, our experience has been a good example of a sector-driven approach, which has brought together tourism policymakers and practitioners and statistics experts, demonstrating a good bottom-up approach to regional policy, governance, and development. Now, I wish to leave you with a few key lessons from our experience. One is embracing our limitations as small island states. The integrated regional sectoral approach we've taken has helped our individual member countries recognize and appreciate the similarities as well as the differences in the challenges that we face in measuring sustainability. Two, as measuring sustainability is still very new to the tourism sector in the Pacific, we note the important role of regional frameworks in informing national level initiatives and programs, and at the same time promote our regional efforts and elevate them at the global level. Three, the tourism sector at its highest governance level in the Pacific has embraced the critical role of statistics in planning, managing, and monitoring tourism development. Now, without tourism statistics, we will be finding ourselves doing the opposite of what we want tourism to bring to our countries. Now, we do not want over tourism or mass tourism. We certainly do not want tourism to be benefiting only a few of society. And we certainly also do not want tourism to be a destructive force on our natural and cultural heritage. We have learned that setting our sustainable tourism priorities first will ensure that our tourism statistics systems will be responding to user needs, not the other way around. And lastly, an inclusive stakeholder consultation process is imperative to a successful policy development process. And capitalizing on our virtual opportunities made available during the pandemic has allowed us to reach as many of our stakeholders as possible. This is normally impossible for us because travel costs in the region is highly unaffordable and expensive here. So we have capitalized on the opportunities presented to us by technology, and we really want to highlight the importance of that. So you are most welcome to access our two policies from the links within this presentation. And should you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them during the Q&A session. You can also reach me directly on the email address above. And thank you very much.